What's everybody? Oh, fuck. Hold on. Start over. I fucked it up. What's up, everybody? I'm Taylor. This is Colton, my
What's
co-host,
up?
and we are the best wargaming. Today, we have a good podcast for y'all. We're going over tips and tricks that you can use as a new player, more of a beginner, or if you're looking to just get into like more competitive play or like further define like how you are as a player.
Mhm.
Um, I know when we were first starting out, it was very overwhelming
There
with
was a lot of
how
stuff.
how large the game is. So hopefully this provides you some type of direction on how you can go about getting into the hobby. So the first topic that we have is identifying what type of game you want to play. So if you don't know this, Warhammer 40k has a lot of different types of games or ways that you can play it. You have competitive play, like going to tournaments, trying to win grand tournaments, super majors. You have casual play, which there's a lot less intensity in casual play. You can kind of just
Mhm.
bring what you want and have fun. And then there's narrative, which we have no experience with. It's called Crusade, so we're not really going to touch on that. And this is really going to be more geared towards getting into competitive play and going to tournaments, just because that's what we specialize in. Um, yeah,
Yup,
yeah,
that's what we do the most.
it's what we
That's
do
what
the
that's
most.
the most fun.
For
We have
us,
fun
yeah,
doing any of
100%.
it. I've heard
We
Crusade is very fun, but we've never dipped into it.
I do want to get into Crusade eventually. We're kind of biased towards competitive play because it's a lot easier doing stuff whenever you have someone to do it with, and we kind of
Yeah.
got into this together. So it took a lot of the nerves, and we got over being afraid pretty quick of just like we just jumped in to
Mhm.
competitive play and kind of took off from that. So stemming off of this, whenever you identify what kind of game you want to play, what do you got to do? You got to pick what army you want to play. So, Colton, what went through your head whenever you decided that you wanted Votan to be your first army?
Well, it's as far as Votan goes, it's kind of hard for me because I had a buddy Cody that hooked me up with a sweet deal, and whenever you get a
Oh
sweet deal
yeah,
for
that's
your first
right.
army, yeah, whenever you get a sweet deal for a first army, that's just kind of what you're going for.
Yeah.
But I can appreciate that the Votan definitely had a much more shooting play style. I mean, they still have it now. They punch a little bit, but shootings there's three main play styles: shooting, melee, and then kind of mix. You can either go all into shooting like Tau, Votan are mostly shooting. Can't think of another shooter army. Just Iron Storm in general. If
Mhm.
you're playing Space Marines, you can go straight melee, Blood Angels, World Eaters,
Yeah,
Orcs.
a lot of armies can have like a shooting or melee archetype.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then, or you can just go mixed. But Votan being mostly shooting definitely helped me at the beginning getting angles, and it helped you a lot, I'm sure, with
Learning
hiding
how to
from said
avoid the angles.
angles.
Yep. Yep.
But what about you? Because you kind of switched armies at the beginning. What made you start with salamanders and then kind of made the switch? What went through your head with that?
So there were a couple reasons why I decided to switch off of salamanders. Uh, to get back a little bit towards the topic, and I'll talk. This kind of like feeds into why I swapped off. So I chose salamanders as my first army because I watched the Bricky video, and I loved the salamanders lore. And at the time, I was so stuck on like trying to be a good guy that I was like, dude, salamanders, they're super cool. They forge weapons. They're the good
Mm-hmm.
guys. They take care of people. And then whenever you get
Here's
into
the
it, you
good
learn that
guys.
everybody's terrible. I mean, salamanders are
Yeah.
still good, but like there's other cool armies, and once you like just you're okay with the fact to be like the bad guy, it opens so many doors for you. So I watched the Bricky video, loved the lore, so I'm like, dude, I'm doing salamanders. I'm pulling. I know
Mm-hmm.
it's a basic bitch move to pick Space Marines for your first army, but I was like, dude, they're cool. You know, I
Yep.
love it. And power armor is just dope if
It
you're
is.
first
It's
getting into
so
the army.
cool.
Yeah. So the reason number one that I ended up swapping off of it is Space Marines in and of itself was very overwhelming to understand what the fuck was going on. Because I distinctly remember I was like, I know that the salamanders have specific characters, but what else can I bring in a salamander list?
Mm-hmm.
Can I just bring any Space Marine unit? These guys are all colored blue, so like, do those guys have to go in Ultramarines? And then I was like, other Space Marine chapters get so many cool characters to pick from and unique stuff, and Salamanders like only got two characters. And then what really was the deciding point for me was I was already overwhelmed. I had already bought like $400 worth of miniatures that I didn't know what the fuck was going on.
You'll
And then I calculated how much it was going to cost to finish my list, and it was going to be like another $400 $500. I was like, I could just get rid of the stuff that I have now, spend $300 $400 and have a 2,000 point Custodes army. And they're
Yup.
well defined. They can only take Custodes and Sisters of Silence units. So as a new player, I was like, I can wrap my head around this. And whenever I looked into it, I was like, the lore is cool. A lot of people that I saw online talking about like Art of War, and some other content creators were like, "Hey, Custodes is a great army to get into when you're learning how to play the game," and it's 100% true because a lot
Yep.
of the infantry and weapon characteristics have the same, they're
Mhm.
like uniform across the whole army. So
722.
yeah, and they're very durable, so you could like mess up and not totally be screwed. But that can kind of like be a double-edged sword, which we can talk about a little bit later. But that's really
Yeah.
what drove me into Custodes. But what I would recommend for new players is the most important thing is you need to pick an army that you want to paint. You think the models are cool. You think the lore is cool. Because getting into the hobby at first, it's like you have a ton of work that you have to do. So you got to make sure that you're having fun doing it so you
Mhm.
don't get burnt out.
The game's only like 20% of the hobby.
Yeah, you
Hey,
spend
painting
80% of
and
your
building is
time.
a lot of it.
Yes. Yes, 100%. Um, so Colton, going into the next topic, we know that whenever you pick your first army, you want to make sure it's something that you have fun with. You want to make sure it's something that you love. What recommendations would you make whenever you're designing your first list?
So as far as list goes, and we're gonna, like he Taylor said earlier, we're gonna lean more towards competitive. I mean, you
Hmm.
could definitely casual's a ton of fun to play. We'll play casual games. You can
Yeah.
play narrative, but we're gonna lean more towards competitive, especially when designing competitive lists. There's usually a pretty good breakdown. If you're playing, let's talk about if you're playing like a mixed army.
Hmm.
I mean, you want to have a good amount of shooting, a good amount of melee, just a counter punch threat.
Hmm.
And I know you want to play the rule of cool, and of course, run if it's cool, run it like that.
Yeah.
Lord of Skulls right
Especially when
there.
you're first starting out. Yeah.
Oh, 100%. Lord of Skulls right there might not be great. He's sick. I'm going to run him. I
It's
run him every
fucking
time I play
cool.
World Eaters.
Yeah.
Um, but the rule of cool is great. But if you're going for competitive, just because you have like a brick at 10 Terminators is sick. You got 10
Yeah.
dudes that are just not getting moved. Running three bricks at 10 is not the move.
No.
You need some cheap things that are just going to go die.
Yeah.
80, 90 point units that you can go send to the middle to just die, do
Yeah.
secondaries. Um, and then but mostly just some shooting, a little bit of melee or all melee if you're playing world
Hmm.
leaders and just going into it. And then you need little units to hold your back point.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a couple of other things. What kind of recommendations do you have?
So the way that I view the game in a competitive space is that there's certain things that are mandatory to. I have my dog here. I'm not just petting my leg, just so you guys know. Here,
Leg.
Maggie, look, show them. Okay, come here, come here, come here, come here. This is my pooch, my Maggie.
That didn't look
Okay,
like a leg. Ugh.
so getting back on topic, um, whenever I think of designing a list with intent. There are certain things that are mandatory that you need to have. So I look at the mission pack and see what missions and secondary missions in the tournament companion, um like what do I need to accomplish the missions in that. So whenever I'm deploying, I was like, hey, I need something to go do containment, which is you have to get along the board edge sides outside of
Mhm.
your deployment zone. So you don't want to send a super expensive unit to go do that. You need something cheap to go do that. So I was like, I need two, three, or four really cheap units that I can throw away.
Yep.
And the rationale behind that is because I automatically assume if I'm putting something out in a shooting lane, it's going to be dead the next turn.
Mhm.
no matter what it is, you know? So like even if it's a super elite army, a lot of the times your opponent has ways to deal with it, especially at a competitive level, that they're just going to shift over and blow that unit up. So you need something that's not a huge point investment, that's not just going to get deleted. You need something cheap to hold your back point. And then you need stuff like in Deep Strike to make backfield plays. And then whenever you're designing your list with intent, you kind of need to figure out what your army's trying to do. There's different styles of army. So I'll go back to Custodes, which is a very elite army. So you want to have chunky units that are going to sit and score primary points, which are the little circles on the map, you know. And then you want to beat your opponent out on primary because you're not going to be able to score as good of secondaries as other armies because you just don't have the tools for it.
Yep.
There's MSU, which means multiple small units, and they are trying to win by scoring more secondary than you. So a lot of that play style surrounds itself on denying you the ability to score secondary, and then scoring it all for themselves, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you have to identify what army you're playing, what its strengths are and what its weaknesses are, and then design around that. And then just get reps in with it. And you kind of touched on the next topic, which is having the most badass unit and running max of them is not a recipe for success unless they are the best unit. In like so like at the beginning of 10th edition, you wanted to run 3 by 10 custodian guard because it was impossible to chew through
Yep.
unless that is the meta. So like me running in T-Suns, running maximum amount of Scarab Occult Terminators just because they're cool is terrible because it's eating up all of my points in my
Mm-hmm.
list, and they're not doing something good enough to justify their cost that I can't get it from like somewhere else in my army.
That or you're over committing to where a 5 man unit is going to kill the same thing a 10 man unit's going to kill. Like
Yep.
you could take half the size unit and you're still going to kill what you're
Yeah.
trying to
It's going to
kill.
be overkill
Yeah.
100%. So that's I'm glad you brought that up because in Pariah and Nexus, I've been running a lot smaller units of Custodian Guard or Wardens because they got the Shield Host update, which increases their damage output by a substantial amount. So
It's a ton.
I don't need to run as many, and I can invest one of those points is one sister squad that I can just put out and go score while I still have that one unit that can just tear something up.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yep. So after this, we're talking about whenever you're prepping for a tournament, if you're there yet, you obviously want to make sure that your stuff is painted. That it depends on what your local climate is like. I would say if you just want to get out and play the game, don't worry about paint score or
Mm-hmm.
showing up with unpainted models. It's better to get out there and start learning the game than be ashamed of it. And a lot of the times, if you just tell people it's like, "Hey, I'm new. That's why my armies aren't painted," you will likely be welcomed into the community and like you'll meet a ton of people because they'll introduce
Mm-hmm.
you most of the time.
I'd say a lot of RTTs do not require you to be painted. It can
Yeah,
depend. Essentially, almost every GT you're going to have to be painted. GT, or so RTT is usually a 1 day tournament that's 3 rounds.
yeah,
And our GT is usually a 5 6 round tournament that's going to be over 2 days, usually Saturday, Sunday.
yeah.
But GTs, I can't think of any GTs that you don't have to be about already. But there's a lot of RTTs you don't have to be. But usually it says it on the packet or on Best Coast pairings where you
Yeah.
can see if you need to be or
And
not.
9 times out of 10, there's contact information for the tournament organizer that you can just reach out to and ask questions. It's a pretty casual thing to do.
Yep.
Um, yeah, so get ready for the tournament. Just sign up. If you want to get into competitive play, don't be scared. It's gonna be a good time, especially if you just
Mm-hmm.
explain that you're new. 99% of the time, your opponent will not take advantage of that and try to teach you how to play the game. Um, but if you want to try to have success in your first tournament, and this applies to if you're just getting into competitive play and you already have an army established, or whether you're building up an army, practice if they've already released the missions, which a lot of tournaments do, practice those missions with your buddy or reach out to somebody in the community and practice those missions before the tournament, and you'll have a ton of success
Mm,
because you can play the mission, be like, okay, well, these are the secondaries that I draw. I don't have a way to do that with my current list design, so I need to take this out and add in this so that way I can potentially score this if this comes up.
yep.
Yep. Yep. Um
100%.
I and Colton and I do that a lot whenever we're playing. We are constantly adjusting our list, and it's really like I say this all the time. It's iron sharpens iron because we're always identifying weaknesses in our list,
Hmm.
and then improving on it. Yeah, yeah.
Just
So
little
that's cool.
units you can replace or make better.
Yep. So my thing, whenever I go to grand tournaments or like super majors, is I always bring a snack card. Um, It's kind of my
Snack
thing.
Commander.
My team name, my name on the back of my jersey on my team is Snack Commander. Because I always have this card. I bring water, snacks, ibuprofen. I bring extra sticks of deodorant also. Just because and that's honestly a really good way to break the ice with your opponent. So be like, hey, you want a snack? You want a water?
Hmm.
And it breaks the ice, and a lot of people appreciate it because if you didn't think to bring that, it's nice to just have it available because if there's no time in between rounds, like you've run late, you don't have time, and then it's just it's a nice way to bring the ice.
And if you've never gone to a tournament, it might not seem, oh, I'm going to go roll dice all day and have fun. If you, after you've been standing for about 9 hours, you're tired.
You are fucking
But
gassed.
by round three, you're sitting in that chair while your opponent's
I
moving.
thought it.
You don't even care what,
I
like,
thought it was fucking
nope.
bullshit, dog. No, it
You,
is legit, and I'm
you
in
will
I'm
be
in pretty good
tired.
shape. Yeah, I'm a Marine. I got out a few years ago. I'm a firefighter. I feel like I'm in pretty good shape.
Mm,
Still gassed. My legs
you'll,
still are tore up at the end of the day.
it's even worse when you go to a GT. Dude, after the Dallas Open that day three, I was done. I didn't even want to play anymore after that. I was
So
excited to play, but I was
the
gassed.
the Dallas Open was a super major, obviously in Dallas. That was 3 days long. The first two
Mhm.
days were 3 games. The last day was 2 games. Did I say two? Did I say
Two
3 days?
games. Two
Yeah,
games.
it's 3-3-2 games. It was a ton of fun, but I was ready to not. Honestly, hold on. I thought I was gonna be sick of Warhammer, but I'm pretty sure we walked away from that tournament. He's like, I'm ready to play another game, dude. It was fun.
I did. I'm glad I just went. I'm just glad I went positive. I went 5-3. I was happy with
Yeah,
that.
yeah. I went 5-3 as well.
I was excited just to go positive at that big
Yep.
of a tournament.
Yep. And honestly, too, so hitting back on the point that we brought up before, if you practice the tournament mission, you'll probably be less tired because you don't have to think as much because you've already got the reps in.
Yeah.
You kind of know what to expect, so you're not having to strain yourself as hard mentally.
Mhm.
Yep.
Going into more actual gameplay,
Hmm.
whenever, especially for new players, whenever you first get to the game, you shake hands with your opponent. My name's Colton. Nice to meet you. Usually, if one of the first things you'll do is go over each other's lists, so you can ask your opponent, or you can go over yours first to be like, "Hey, this is what I'm running. Blah blah blah. This unit, that unit. This is my warlord enhancements." And one thing you want to ask your opponent is, hey, do you have any fights first? Do you have any reactive moves? Do you have anything that just breaks the core rules of the game? Now it's not
Hmm.
supposed to be played. And especially as a new player, whenever your opponent's telling you their army, don't try and memorize everything they're telling you.
No.
You will not remember it all. Especially if it's an army you've never played against. They can tell you everything, all the stratagems, what every data sheet does, you won't remember it.
No.
I would recommend just focusing on things that break the game. Like in our battle report, my Jaegers have a reactive move. So
Yep.
while Taylor was moving into it, I just want to make sure he knew about it. Um, I don't Custodes used to have a fights first ability back when they had that.
We
And
still
then
have it on a Leia, dude.
and rules like that, like reactive move, fight first, just completely they change the core rules of the
Yeah.
game. So you want to know about it. And you also, if you have any and your opponent doesn't ask, just tell them
Yeah.
so that you're not gotching them whenever y'all get into the game. It's like,
Yep.
hey, I know it's round three and this is important. You just charge my dude. By the way, he fights first. And then you just wipe
Yep.
your opponent's unit before they even know.
Yeah, that's a topic that we're gonna cover again later in the video, but don't be a dick. Okay,
Yeah.
as you want, you know, it's gonna be like the old saying, it's like treat others how you want to be treated. I want to be told if you have a reactive move or a redeploy or a fights first. A lot of the things that I ask at the beginning game is whenever I always set up my army ready to be deployed. So I have a case, I take them off the tray, I start setting them up, organizing them. And as my opponent is doing the same thing, I'm like, hey, have you ever played against, especially when I'm playing T-Sons, I'm like, hey, have you ever played against T-Sons before?
Talk
Because
about an army that doesn't play the game how it's supposed to be
if you
played.
have never played against Thousand Sons before, it's gonna be a bad time. So
Mhm.
I try my best to communicate what I'm doing and why I'm doing it, which is also
Mhm.
communicating with intent, you know? A lot of the time, like in my opponent's movement phase, right? Hold on. I'll get back to this. But whenever I'm setting up my army and I'm putting it out, I'm like, hey, do you have any redeploys? And they'll be like, yeah, this unit redeploys. And I make a mental note. I'm like,
Mhm.
okay, that, and even when you're playing the game, hey, I forgot which one of your unit redeploys. Could you remind me?
Yep.
And then I make a mental note. Okay, he even if he doesn't have anything in deep strike, that one unit can redeploy. I still need to screen.
Yep.
Okay. I'm playing a melee army. That unit fights first. That's why you need to have some kind of shooting threat. So if they have a fight first unit out in the open, you try to shoot them before you charge them,
Yep.
or like a fight on death. So if you've seen the battle report that he and I just posted, I'm pretty sure I tried to shoot your berserkers before I charged them because I know they
Mhm.
can fight on death. Um, and things like that. So whenever I'm playing T-Sons, where I can move like an absurd amount with Magnus, and they're checking angles, I'm not going to be a dick and be like, oh yeah, Magnus moves 16 inches.
Mhm.
And then he's pre-measuring and like trying to figure out, it's like, okay, so if he moves 16 inches, he gets here, he can't see me here. And then I'm withholding knowledge like, hey, just so you know, I can spend
Move
5 cabal
twice.
points, yeah, and double move or add 2 to my movement. Um, so you don't want to do that. You just want to communicate honestly. It goes back to you just want the best general to win the game, and that can only happen if you provide your opponent with all of the information about your army. You don't have to go into strategy like, hey, I want to eventually get over here to take your home point. Just communicate as like, hey, I have the potential to do this. Um,
Yeah.
and then dude, we're kind of just rolling into the next topics
Yeah, it's all right.
as we're going because they all kind of tie together. They're kind
Yeah.
of chronological. So it kind of goes into playing with intent. So if your opponent, a lot of the time I will clarify at the beginning of the game is like, hey, just so you know, I play by intent. If you tell me you're going to do something, or if it's obvious like, hey, you meant to do this, I'm
Mhm.
going to let you do it because it's more important for me that we have a good time, you know?
Yeah.
I was just watching a video yesterday about Nick Navinati and some guy at LVO like 6 years ago, where the game previous, and I think this was the championship game. The game previous, Nick's opponent was like at the beginning of the game was like, "Hey, I play by intent. Let's just have a cool game." And then he put out his deep strike before he finished moving because he was just trying to get the measurements, and he put
Yep.
down his deep strike, and he was like, "Oh, you're done moving. You deep striked."
That's
Yeah.
wild.
It was cringe. And then Nick in the next game, he was playing him next. He like moved on to the next phase and he was like, "Oh, I'm gonna spend a CP to advance." He was like, "No, you have to do that after you advance. Like you have to do it that." And he got him
Yep.
back. It was so good. It was so good. But play by intent, a lot of the time I clarify that. And then as I'm moving things, I'm like, "Hey, I'm probably gonna rapid ingress here." So that way if you forget, you can you'd be like, well, we agreed to play by intent. You know?
Yeah. And then so especially playing with intent, and just in case anybody doesn't know, it's like, hey, I'm moving this guy right here. Your guy moves X amount of inches, so your guy cannot clear that angle to where he can see
Yes.
him. And then on
Mhm.
your opponent's turn, if your opponent moves that and it's like, oh, hey, he actually could see him. Okay,
Yep.
is it okay if I move him back half an inch or a
Yes.
quarter of an inch so you can't see him because that was my intention.
Yep. And it,
And you can know what you can play by intention. There is it's good to like get like over with your opponent like, hey, I'm doing this, do you agree that that's possible,
mhm.
just to make sure your opponent is see like,
On
hey,
the
yeah,
same
it looks
page.
like you can't I can't make it to where I can see that guy.
you can read the body language a lot too.
Mhm.
Because if they don't give you an answer, I'm like, I will ask them. I was like, well, can you verify that if you move here, you can't see my
Yeah.
unit? And then they have to, just so you're on the same page.
And then so after going into that, one of the things, it's a game we're playing. In the end, we're playing a game of minis. Try not to get too tilted. I will say there is times where if you do get tilted, just try, like, if something happens in the game, it's like at the end, it's like, hey, I should have done that. We had a game the other day where I'm not gonna lie, I got really tilted in the middle of
Hmm.
our game, and I felt bad because at the end I was like, that ruined that the rest of the experience for me. And I
Yeah.
told Taylor, I was like, I'm so sorry that I got tilted and it ruined the rest of the game. And since then, I try to be better about it. But
It
don't
it
it's just a dice game. The dice aren't going to work the
yeah.
way you want sometimes.
It's inevitable that it's going to happen.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody gets tilted as at a certain point. What we're recommending is don't ruin the time for your opponent,
Mm-hmm.
because you don't want it to reflect poorly on yourself. Especially,
Yeah.
a lot of people are very passionate and spend a lot of time, obviously, painting and putting lists together and theory crafting. That whenever you put it on the table and it doesn't work out, it's very frustrating.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not necessarily that you're upset with your opponent, but it's like, hey, I just spent all this time and it's just so defeating that it didn't work out the way that I thought it was going to work out. Or you've just gone through a series of getting your ass kicked, like multiple games, which is kind of, and I don't want to say I was kicking your ass, but I had kind of dumpstered you the last few games that we had played.
Mm-hmm.
And this game, I had like a lot of things that I think a few things had gone my way in the beginning, and
Yeah.
I was keeping track of the score, so you didn't really know how close the game actually was. So you kind of just like were like, "Well, I'm just getting dumpstered again.
Yeah.
Like, what's the point?" But you ended up winning the game. Yeah.
Yeah. It was a learning experience, just doing better. I won the past couple ones though, so we'll take what we
Yo, let's go. Let's go.
can.
Like, I got absolutely dumpstered on our battle report that we posted to the channel. But you kind of just gotta you just so I learned a lot from the game. We did kind of just unga bunga it because we
Yeah.
spent a ton of time setting up. But even then, like I was looking back and I was like, well, had I staged like I had messaged you, I was like, I
Mm,
should have staged my wardens towards your natural expansion objective. Okay, so your natural expansion objective is the objective that is closest for you to grab in no man's land.
yep.
You'll hear it referred to that a lot.
Usually
That
you can hold it from behind a wall where you're not going to get shot by your opponent except for
yeah.
very close angles.
Unless you are going up against an army that moves very fast or can advance in charge, you can reliably hold your natural expansion objective for at least a turn.
Yep.
Yeah. So that's one good source of primary that you can just score like that.
Mhm.
So I was looking back at that game. I was like, if I had put my wardens there, I would have put myself in a trench that you would have had to dig me out of. And I moved my wardens up. And then the only thing that you're getting to with them that you had staged over there was reliably your warriors and then your Thunderkin whenever
Yeah.
you wrap and ingress them. Because even your Hearthguard would have taken a turn or two to get over there, and then I could have set up a counter charge.
Yep.
So just little things like that. And that goes into another point that we're gonna make is it's never a failure if you learn from it.
Yep.
Okay. If you just horribly mess up, do not be so hard on yourself. Because if you just avoid getting tilted, think about it level-headedly, you will find ways to improve and get better at the game. Yeah, so I can move my wardens up, stage at
Mhm.
my natural expansion point. I can stage with my Virtus Praetors, and like we were saying just a second ago, um, that your opponent's not so your natural expansion for you to get on it. I do have a fast mover, which is my Virtus Praetors. They move 12 inches, so I'm going to be able to attack that. And then they had the ability where I can make a fallback or normal move at the end of the fight phase. So I
Mhm.
hit you, probably kill whatever I hit because
Yep.
they hit very hard, and then I tuck myself in a corner where only like one of your things that's good at shooting is going to take them out.
Yeah.
So learn from your mistakes, get better at the game, and when you are getting absolutely dumpstered, just try to have fun with it.
Yeah.
It, nobody's gonna win every game of Warhammer. Uh, the best thing you can do is just try to improve from your failures.
You know you're gonna lose, just start ripping them 9-inch charges. Just start ripping them, dude.
Dude, true.
Unless you're
True,
Taylor,
dude.
then don't rip the 9-inch charges. Don't even
No,
rip a
don't
4-inch
don't rip that.
charge.
Dude, when I was editing that video, I was like, of course Colton's busy, so I have to edit this whole freaking video where I'm getting absolutely torn apart.
The
I failed more charges that game than I made.
yeah,
Yeah.
that
Because I failed five in the first turn because I had two rerolls and then the other Vertispreader squad.
oh, you rolled 5 charges turn
I
one,
rolled
huh?
five
Oh
charges that I
my.
failed. And then the next turn I failed a 4-inch charge with the
Yep.
grav tank. I
Two
re-rolled it into
6-inch
like a
charges.
3. Yeah, and then my guard failed the charge.
Yep.
I didn't get a successful charge for I think my blade champ made it in when I scammed you when I said it had 6 attacks when it actually has 5.
He only killed one dude.
Yeah, because I rolled like six
And then I mean
ones.
your captain made it in after that, but it was a point blank charge where he was making it happen.
Yeah, and then he exploded and killed him.
It was beautiful. It was just
That game was so fun.
beautiful.
But I
And
could have
then
chose to get tilted because it's not going the way that I thought it
yeah,
would, but we ended up having a ton of fun.
that game was very fun.
Yeah. So even if you get tilted, at the end of the game, make sure you shake your opponent's hand and say good game. Try to
Yep.
not complain too much because it takes away from the experience from your opponent. Even though you can go shoot the shit with your buddies later or vent to
Oh
somebody.
yeah. Afterwards, you go tell your buddies, I had to play against Necron monoliths, and they just deep striked a 3-inch deep strike the monolith right next to me and just pooped out a bunch of
Fuck.
OC2 warriors.
Yeah.
I can't charge the monolith to keep it there because it's got like 5 attacks. It's strength 12 or something.
At the Dallas Open, I remember being so defeated at the end of the day, and then we went to go eat, and I started feeling a lot better. I was drained, but I was beating my Grey Knights opponent, and then they got the perfect draws the last turn, and they had gone second. They got capture enemy outpost and then like storm hostile, and I had left just enough room for them to 3-inch deep strike on my home point. And it was a super dumb move. I could have just moved them
Yep.
and screamed it out, but it was so defeating, dude.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I just try to have fun with it, learn from your mistakes, shake your opponent's hand. And this also ties in. Move on to the next game and try to not think about the previous game too much. Because you don't want to start the next game tilted. You want to try to be clear-headed. Um, try to learn from your mistakes, but don't hold on to the failures and then just go to the next one clear-headed.
You're going to be playing a whole new dice game with a brand new person that you've maybe never played against before.
Mm-hmm.
Have fun.
Yep.
Roll some dice.
Roll
Make
some
that
dice.
nine
And you
inch
know what?
charge.
As soon as you learn the first game, 99 times out of 10, out of 100, you're not going to win the tournament. So just have fun. Like, who
Yeah.
cares? You know? Unless I mean, we always go for goals. Like when we went to the Dallas Open, we both wanted to go 5-3,
Mm-hmm.
and we did. So that was cool. And then the next GT, like I wanted to go 4-1, and I did. So yeah. Yep.
Pipe.
This ties into something that we were just talking about. Know yourself and seek self-improvement. So like I said earlier, I'm a Marine. That is a tenet in the Marine Corps is know yourself and seek self-improvement. What that means is try to figure out what your weaknesses are, what your strengths are, and try to build up your weaknesses and maintain your strengths. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So if you know that you forget to deep strike your stuff, focus on that. Even if that entire game you're like, I don't care what happens, I'm just going to remember to put my deep strikes in. And then eventually it'll be like muscle memory and you won't ever forget.
Yep.
So always keep building on that. And then the last thing that we're going to talk about is having integrity. The biggest, the only thing that you can do to alienate yourself or put a stain like on your name is to cheat or lie or don't fully disclose your list or try to hide things. You need to have integrity when you're playing this game. Or like, hey, I'm bending over and picking something up, and then you're rolling dice in the tray, and you're like, oh, all of my stuff hit when you rolled like 3 ones. That is the biggest way to get shunned by
Yeah.
everybody.
100%. I think that's an important thing is just that specific thing. Whenever you're rolling dice, make sure your opponent can see what you're rolling.
Yep. Don't roll it behind terrain.
Yeah.
And if you do, make sure you don't move your hand and push it out to where he can see it.
Mm-hmm.
There we I don't think it's really happened to me, but I've heard some horror stories. Like we have this one buddy who was playing against someone that's using the Tabletop Battles app and was like picking the missions when they're supposed to be like randomizing at the top.
Yep.
Like he sees his hand moving up and down. That is terrible because like whenever I end up playing that guy, I'm always thinking in the back of my head, it's like, is this guy cheating? So like I'm
Mm-hmm.
having to like second guess what my opponent is doing, and then it's not a fun game, you
You're having
know?
to worry more about if they are doing this than the
Yep.
game itself. Yeah.
Yep. 100%. Or like if this guy is known to like manipulate dice and like you need to like beat it it takes the fun out of the game and you're having to worry about making sure that your opponent is being honest so you don't get cheated.
Yeah.
And also for yourself is like there's no fun to me in winning if I cheated. You know, I want to win because I'm the best person there.
Yeah.
And if you cheat, you're a baby back bitch. Sorry.
Anybody can win if you cheat.
Yeah.
It's no fun.
Yeah. I only cheat against Colton in our practice
Yeah,
games.
yeah, yeah. That's it.
Yeah.
I only use those six loaded sixes for my Sagittars when I'm overwatching.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Bro. Shut up, dude.
The one time
I
I
hate you
rolled
so
box
much.
cars on that Sagittar Overwatch, dude.
I hate it, dude.
I
Oh, it
keep
feels
those
so
dice. I keep
bad.
those dice to the side.
Yep. So that's everything that we really wanted to talk about. How we're trying to do these podcasts is just kind of loose discussion based off of our past experiences or like what these topics mean to us. So it doesn't feel like super restrictive or like we're reading off a script. But this is starting off a series that we're going to start doing where we're about to start going into like fundamentals of playing Warhammer at a competitive level to try to like get you, you know, just some familiarity with it.
Yeah,
Um,
especially for new players.
yeah, and a lot of it is gonna be like terms and words that you can like hear that you don't really know what they mean. So like move blocking, um, and things like that. I can't think
Yeah.
of them right now. I'm tired.
Everybody says armor contempt for
Yeah.
stratagems that reduce CP.
Did you like
And
that meme that I put when you said armor contempt in the battle report?
yeah, he said armor
Yeah.
good. I was like, is
What?
he gonna leave that up or is he gonna put void armor on there? And then whenever I said
Yeah,
it,
I did.
I was like, okay, okay.
Yeah.
He
I'm an
did.
editing guy, you know. I do the thing. So yeah, we're gonna start doing fundamental Warhammer things, talking about move blocking, screening, knowing like threat assessment is a big thing for me. I honestly think that's why I've had success being new into the hobby, but like I've had success at a competitive level because I feel like I'm pretty good at assessing threats and I'm analyzing it and knowing how much I can commit to one thing so I don't just put a ton of my army out, which isn't
Yeah.
apparent in the battle report because I got dumpstered again. But I promise I don't normally play like that.
The battle report was not our best list. We wanted to play something, but
Yeah.
like he never uses bikes. I never used Thunderkin in any of my
Yeah. Yeah.
lists.
Yeah. Yeah.
It
Dude,
was
the
like
Thunderkid's
let's put them
kind
on
of
the
fucked
table.
though. And I don't know, but I don't know if
They're all
it's
right.
because you were rolling hot and I was rolling trash that they were
Not
good,
against the
but
prosecutors or whatever. Which they no, they're prosecutors. Those things didn't die.
who
I shot them with.
cares, you know?
I shot the prosecutors with six Thunderkin
I
and
was
killed one
watching
of
back at
them.
the video and I rolled like 11 saves or something, and I rolled one that was under a 4. And I'm like, I could have used that when you were shooting my Vertus
It,
Praetors.
it
That
was
would have
my
been cool.
like my Hessier rolling his 4-up in bowls. My little blue
Yeah,
boy, dude. He was just getting it.
he
Bang,
was
bang, bang,
fucking
bang, bang.
in it, dog.
He was rolling every single one.
Yup.
I'm excited for us to put some more armies on the table. If y'all have
Yep.
anything y'all want to see specifically, let us know too.
I'm
We'll
trying to get
play
these
it.
orcs. Trying to get these orcs ready, dog. I
Sir.
just put some basing on. I gotta dry brush them later.
I got my dudes ready, dude. Look at this gray on gray battle ready.
Dude, I like that color scheme you got
I
going,
know it's
dude.
kind of sick. It's
Yeah.
nasty.
The matte black with the glossy gray,
The
dude.
glossy gray, dude. Matte
Yeah.
gray. All right.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for watching, everybody. Make sure to like, comment, subscribe, hit that bell.
Yeah.
We're gonna have a lot of videos coming soon.
Yep.
Hopefully, y'all like to watch them.
We are having a holiday special battle report.
New Year's battle
Um,
report.
New Year's battle report, baby. So make sure you tune in for that. I think I'd like to release it like where it lines up with New Year's Eve, maybe. That'd be
Yeah, I
cool.
think we could do that. We'll have some
Yeah.
new. We got some new equipment coming in too.
Ooh, we got some
It's gonna be
lapel mics. Audio's gonna
spicy.
be good. But yeah, thank y'all for watching.
Mhm.
Again, I'm Taylor. This is Colton. We're the best war gaming.
Yes, sir.
And we're gonna have a lot of fun stuff coming at you. So stay tuned.
We'll see y'all next time.
Peace.
Peace.